Hey y'all, this is Jason. Just wanted to let you know that around halfway through we have some audio issues with Miles. Want to apologize for that ahead of time, but let y'all know that it's still a great episode. A lot of good stuff in here. Just a few minutes around the middle of the pod where we have some issues there that we wanted to let you know about. Thank you. Welcome back to another episode of the Climbing the Pocket podcast. I am your host, Jason Brown. You can find me on Twitter at BrownJason. Joined once again by the full crew. Got everyone here tonight. It's the man, the myth, the legend, QB1, putting in overtime, doing all the work today. What's going on, Jordan?
What's going on? Bye-week blues. We got a lot to talk about.
Yes, sir, we do. And on to the man who left QB2 high and dry because apparently it was snowing or something. Miles Gorham, what's going on, man?
Yeah, it was like 30 degrees on Monday. I was not about that life.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. I understand. I had to go trick-or-treating in that kind of weather just the other day, so I feel you.
Yeah.
But I'd much rather stayed inside. And, you know, last but certainly not least, QB2, Saxy Prince. How's it going, my man?
What's going on, y'all? Been a long day, but we're back to, just enjoying football, doing what we do. Halloween was earlier this week. So I guess my question is kind of either a one or two part question is more or less, what was y'all's costumes like on Halloween? Or even if you didn't dress up, what would you have dressed up as? And if you didn't do anything for it, what was your Halloween candy of choice? My Halloween candy of choice this year was Tootsie Rolls. I don't think you can ever go wrong with essentially chocolate taffy. I found that out a long time ago. That's what it is. And if I did dress up, it probably would have been, another obscure anime reference because I'm a nerd. So, well, y'all.
Oh, okay, well, I guess we'll go to QB1, even though I'm a little bit nervous after, some of his candy takes set the timeline on fire earlier in the week. But we'll risk it anyway. I guess, JR, what's your candy of choice? And if you were going to dress up, what would you be?
First, I have to give a shout out to a tweet. I forgot who put it up. A guy said I dressed up for Halloween as Sam Bradford because I wanted to let the ladies know that I play no games. I thought that was just a fantastic tweet. Very creative.
Savage.
So shout out to him.
That's savage.
Yeah, I got to find that. I'm going to go looking for that right now.
Yeah, it was pretty funny. But anyway, I've never been like a big Halloween person. I'm not big on sweets or candy like that, so I never really been into Halloween like that. But my two favorite candies are Starburst and Skittles. That's really the only two that I eat, sweets or candy. No other candy really matters to me. The other ones are really irrelevant. And Reese's, chocolate, all that is trash.
And it is shout out to our man, John Michelli, at John A. Michelli on the twitter.com. Going to dress up like Sam Bradford for Halloween so the ladies know I play no games. Savage. Miles, how about you, man?
I love how Jared had to call that out. But I don't agree with his hatred for the like Reese's and all that because I think I like Reese's Fast Breaks the most, like in terms of like the chocolate. But I'm more of like a gummy guy, like Lifesaver gummies, or I like Skittles. I like Starbursts are good. That's the kind of candy I like to go to. That's my go-to. Gummy worms, gummy bears, all that.
Yes, sir. And for me, I've been steady stealing the kids' Sour Patch Kids since I took them out trick-or-treating. And if I was going to be forced to dress up, I would have dressed up as what I was, which was a really, really cold father who wanted to be anywhere but outside in the street when it was below freezing, trick-or-treating with the children. But now that we got that out the way, we got some stuff to talk about. So obviously the big news of the day, Deshaun Watson goes down, non-contact injury in practice. It's confirmed now that he tore the ACL in his other knee. And so, JR, he was your guy, QB1 for you this year. I know there's someone that you've been rooting for. I guess, what are your thoughts?
Hold up.
Uh-oh.
I'm all for it. And I know JR became a Deshaun Watson fan. But don't forget where it started. And don't forget who persuaded Jared to go to jump on that bandwagon.
Okay, well then never mind. Since Miles was the original Deshaun Watson cruiser,
I'm just
Miles,
trying to get
you
stuff
give
out there. I'm
us
just playing around.
you give us your take first, and then JR can defend himself.
Like Jared's like now like his opinion doesn't matter now. No. No, it's terrible. I mean, Deshaun Watson's one of those. He's the most exciting young player in the league right now. He was in the running for potentially, MVP. Obviously, it was between him and Kareem Hunt for Offensive Player of the Year. The Houston Texans, had an opportunity to make the playoffs. He's playing great. They finally got their quarterback of the future in Houston, so it's super exciting. So it's just really bummed to hear about it. He's a great guy. It's not even just on the field. Deshaun Watson's a great person off of it, everything I've read and seen. So it's just terrible, and you just hope he makes a good recovery. He's able to, come back next year.
All right, JR, the floor is yours.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a terrible situation. You hate to see that, especially for a guy that was on pace for a record-breaking, season as far as passing touchdowns. He was on pace for 43, I believe it was. He had the most by any rookie quarterback through 7 games. And it's just amazing that they didn't start him week 1. And just seeing the success that he's come in and had is just really good. But you hate to see him go down like that, especially for a city that was just, embracing the World Series and then coming back 16 hours later and then having their franchise quarterback going down with a torn ACL off a non-contact injury. It's just bad luck. And, Houston has just been through a whirlwind of events the past few months. You talk about the hurricane and, J.J. Watt doing all his efforts for everything. The Astros winning the World Series and then Deshaun Watson going down with that injury. So it's really a tough situation for them.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if you guys follow Old Takes Exposed, but apparently someone in Houston tweeted out like a week ago, if the price for a Astros World Series was a Deshaun Watson injury, would you take it, yes or no? And apparently a bunch of people tweeted yes and voted yes, joking around, and then this happened. So that dude's going to be real famous.
I hate people like that. Like, why do that? Like, that's just so messed up.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. And they exposed that dude today, so it's probably gonna be a long day for him if he hasn't already deleted his account. But I guess Sexy Prince, will wrap it up to you. I know that you were the one who let me know the injury happened because you tagged me in the tweet, kind of retweeting. I think it was Rappaport at the time. I guess what are your thoughts on everything, and I guess what your feelings about what's going on with Deshaun Watson and his road to recovery?
Yeah, Watson was my QB1 coming out of Clemson last offseason. I mean, J.R. Miles obviously put me on to him, but I just loved everything about his game. He obviously reminded me of a guy that I really fell in love with a couple of years ago, Teddy Bridgewater. I mean, he showed it was just clear he exhibited the signs of leadership that you wanted. I thought Bill O'Brien made a stupid decision ever starting Tom Savage because I think it was clear he had the it factor to push him over the top. And I think he showed that, radar guns and, perceived arm strength and all these little cliches that we run into with these big NFL guys or, just like fans in general, that, arm strength isn't the end all be all as far as, these players, specifically at the quarterback position. I think Deshaun Watson from the beginning showed like this is the guy for the Texans, and they were a quarterback away from really being a pretty unstoppable team at times. So it was devastating. I feel for the Houston fan base. It's exactly how we were feeling probably a little over a year ago. But he'll make a huge recovery and be in the running for comeback player of the year next year.
All right, now we'll keep it moving with a little bit more somber news before we bring things back up again, and we're going to talk about a subject very quickly that I know JR is absolutely sick of reading about and hearing about. So we're going to start with him and get his take on it. Ezekiel Elliott is suspended again. I guess what is your thought about this now that it was the 3rd time I think that he's been suspended, possibly unsuspended, but it looks like he's actually suspended. I guess what are your thoughts on it? And given what he did last year, and what he's done season to date, I guess, what do you think this means for the Cowboys in their season going forward?
I'm just tired of hearing about it. Like, I mean, either he's suspended or he's not. Just make a decision at this point. I mean, if he would have sat out at the beginning of the year, his suspension would already be over. And, I mean, I'm happy for him for fighting this fight and trying to stay on the field to help his team. But, I mean, it's just looking like you're going to have to serve your suspension at the end of the day. And in typical Cowboys fashion, what's going to end up happening is he's going to get suspended for a playoff game, and they're going to uphold the suspension. He's going to have to sit out. But, I mean, we know Zeke is a big-time player. He definitely helps that Cowboys offense. And that offensive line has unquestionably taken a step back this year, but he's still been able to produce at a high level. But now they're in a situation where Dak is going to have to show some growth and some even more better development at this point, especially with Ezekiel Elliott now missing 6 games, or what's looking like he's going to miss 6 games. So it's going to be interesting to see if the situation does end up getting turned around as far as the suspension and he is able to keep playing, or if he finally has to serve those 6 games.
Yeah, and it's I don't think anyone would have guessed going into to this season anyway that Jerick McKinnon and Ezekiel Elliott would have the same yards per carry at this point in the season. Miles, I guess, do you have anything to add on the Zeke suspension? Do you think that he went about it the right way? Do you think it's going to really affect the Cowboys, or do you think we just really been talking about this whole thing way too much?
Well, I mean, probably a little bit of all of the above for what you just said. I mean, he's going to do what he needs to do for him in terms of, he feels he's not guilty. He feels that he's being, unjustly suspended from the NFL when, with the way the rules set up in the NFL, you don't have to be convicted, or you can be charges can be dismissed and you can still get suspended. But he feels like there's no evidence. There's not enough evidence for him to be convicted. I'm not sitting here saying he did or didn't do anything wrong, but if he feels he didn't do anything wrong and he feels that they don't have any evidence to uphold that, I mean, I totally understand him, fighting for that, for that right to stay and to play and earn his money. Like, it's his job. So I'm all about that. I get it. It sucks for the team because, right now if he gets suspended now, he's not back until I think, week 15, 16 now. So they could potentially be out of the playoff race by then. So that could really be some, big implications for the Cowboys. But I mean, like I said, I just think, he needed to do what's best for him and keep fighting that, in a similar way that Tom Brady did it. Obviously not to the same extent in terms of the violation that we're looking at, but the kind of the process. But overall, it sucks for the Cowboys, but I think, with the offensive line they have and how effective they can be in the run game, it'll hurt for sure. But I think, like JR said, I think as long as Dak can continue to progress and, be the threat he is without Zeke, that'll definitely be the big difference there.
Awesome. Saxy Prince, bring us home.
Yeah, I don't have much to say about it. I kind of agree with the fellas. It would have just been Zeke's best interest to just take the suspension. Obviously missed the first 6 games, but then really, really kind of come back and be, really be that guy that could really give him a plug. Or not a plug, but more of that push at the end of the season if they are still in the playoff race and stuff. He's chosen not to. Obviously, he feels that he's not guilty. I'm not a person who can say that he is or he is not. But I am a little bit worried as far as Dak. I know that he's a great player, but I do still think he's still a young player, so he does need a little bit more help. And I think that there's a very good chance that he might struggle this time without Zeke and not having someone to rely on both in the run and the pass game. So, I think it's going to be a somewhat of a significant blow for the Cowboys, but, we'll see as it goes on.
All right. And then, to bring things up, because, this year, the trade deadline in the NFL was actually, exciting. It was actually, trades happening, big name players moving teams. So we're going to go through rapid fire here. JR, what was your favorite trade and which one do you think will have the biggest kind of implications for the rest of the season?
Well, my favorite one was Monster Darius to the Jaguars. I know his contract was very bad. He has $45 million left over the next 3 years, I believe it is. But I think he takes that Jaguars defensive line to the next level. They were already elite, in my opinion, but I think he takes him to an even better level already with Calais Campbell playing at a very high level. And, I mean, their ends are playing good. Fowler and Ngakoue are playing out of their minds right now. Lee Jackson is playing some good ball, and the secondary has been unbelievable. So, in typical Tom Coughlin fashion, he's building that team the way he wants them to play. And that's being very good up front and being able to run the ball. And we saw that's how he won Super Bowls with the New York Giants. And so that's definitely how he's building that team. So Marcel Darius to the Jaguars was my favorite.
Blake Bortles equals Eli Manning. Is that kind of the trend there too?
Keep it out of his hands. Feed Fournette.
Kinda.
Elite quarterback play.
Feed Fournette.
Hall of Fame Eli Manning. Miles, what was your favorite one?
Man, I'm like mulling over all the ones that happened because there's quite a bit. I thought the Dwayne Brown one was a little steep, especially since I liked it. Okay, let me rephrase it. I like the Dwayne Brown's probably overall my favorite because I think it's going to have the biggest impact. That offense is already pretty good, and the way Russell Wilson's playing right now. But adding a premier left tackle that they really need. But I thought it was a little steep, especially since the Jeremy Lane failed his physical. So then the Seahawks had to throw in an extra third-round pick for this year, I think it was. So that a second in 2019, and then a third this year, and I might be missing one other. But quite a bit for a left tackle, but I understand it because, I mean, left tackles are, tackles in general right now in the NFL are really hard to come by, and be able to get a, top, I don't even know what you'd call Dwayne Brown, a top 10-ish left tackle. I don't even want to get into all that, but he's pretty good. He's 32, but they paid the premium for him because they need him. So I like that because they went and got somebody they need, and they're trying to make a run this year. So they're with the way their defense is, kind of starting to age a little bit, and they're gonna have to move on from some guys in the offseason. Might as well go all in this year, and try to come out of the NFC. And then the Jimmy Garoppolo trade, like, say what you want about the price. I think the way the 49ers handled their trade with the Bears last year, I think it allowed them a little more opportunity and a little leeway to make a move like this without it really hurting them. So I like it because then they get to kind of see what Jimmy Garoppolo's got before he's a free agent. They can kind of start him the last half of the season with, not really big expectations for winning anything. So they kind of take some pressure off of the coach and off Jimmy Garoppolo, so they can kind of see a little bit of what he has. I know they're going to pay him either way, but I kind of like that trade just, for the 49ers' sake. Unfortunately, they lost Pierre Garçon for the year, so that's kind of hurt Garoppolo. But either way, those are my two favorite.
All right. Saxy Prince, what about you, man? What was your favorite?
I think mine's a pretty obvious one. I love the Ajayi to the Eagles move. I think that they were somewhat of a dynamic running back away from really being a kind of a top-tier team that puts them over the top. I mean, they already are one of the best, if not the best team in the league, but I did feel as if they were missing kind of that running back to take a little bit more pressure off of Carson Wentz. I think he's playing at an extremely high level this season, but I do think that he is a Mike Zimmer defense away from, having a really poor game. So I think that this adds another dimension of things that he can that will put less pressure on him and have the offense more click on multiple dimensions. So I absolutely loved that trade. I think it was smart for the Eagles to go get it back. And I mean, I think we've talked about it before. Like, hey, when you know that you have a Super Bowl caliber, either team, offense, defense, all that stuff, go get the missing pieces and go make a run. And I think that's what the Eagles did by getting Ajayi.
Yeah, and I know that we talked about this like really briefly in the group message, but I guess was there any trade that you guys could have thought of that you would have wanted to see the Vikings make? Like, if there was a trade to be made for the Vikings, like what position would you have wanted them to even go out and try to shore up? Let's start with you, JR.
It was O-line for me. I still think they're weak at the guard spots. I mean, Nick Eason has been good in pass protection, but his run blocking has been he leaves a lot to be desired in run blocking, and that's saying it nicely. I still think they needed to go and get a veteran guard. It would have been nice to get a guy like a Richie Incognito or somebody like that. I know the Bills probably would never trade him, but it would have been nice to get a guy like that.
And just a follow-up question, just going back to something that Miles had brought up. I know that, the Jimmy Garoppolo trade got a lot of, a lot of ink was spilled on that one. A lot of people talking about it. JR, in Europe, like, is Jimmy Garoppolo good?
I mean, the sample size is way too small right now. I think he's only thrown about like 95 passes in the regular season, but it's been a couple games where he was impressive. I know he's got a couple multi-touchdown games, but the sample size is just too small right now, and it's kind of unfair to judge him at this point. But going to the 49ers, I think, will definitely help him because we've seen Kyle Shanahan's ability to scheme around quarterbacks' limitations and him able to cater to the strengths of his quarterbacks. We saw in Atlanta where, he basically helped Matt Ryan earn MVP and take them to the Super Bowl. So it'll be interesting to see how Garoppolo does adjust to Kyle Shanahan and how good is Kyle Shanahan able to make him look and how good will Garoppolo be in Shanahan's system.
Okay. I guess, Miles Yinka, were there any trades that you wanted to see the Vikings make?
No specific players. Miles, I'll let you jump in. No specific players, but I maybe wanted us to get some more cornerback depth. Just DB in general, I guess.
I thought a really good trade would have been the Vikings going after, a guy like Alex Boone from Arizona Cardinals. I think he could have been a good fit at left guard. Sorry, I couldn't keep that straight face and not laugh about it. No, I think JR hit it on the head. Just some interior O-line depth. But I think, guys like Danny Isidora have done a really nice job filling in for Nick Easton, and it sounds like Nick Easton's going to be back. So I can totally understand why they didn't invest in, make an investment there, because it would have, O-line right now, like we said earlier, is at a pretty high premium. So it would probably cost quite a bit to go get somebody. But, I think they're okay with, Searles and Isadora and Nick Easton as their, obviously, and then there's Joe Berger, but they're okay with, those guys and what they have there. So they're pretty comfortable there. I'd say offensive line, maybe even, I don't even know. They went and got a running back, so that would have been the only other one I, would have maybe thought about, a third running back, but that's about it.
Okay. All right. Well, I guess, the Vikings did play a game since the last time that we've talked on this podcast. So I guess we'll start with JR here. Vikings, Browns, what are your thoughts? What is your, I guess, your takeaways from the game?
I thought it was a slow start offensively. We've seen that the past few games where the offense just seems out of sync in the first two quarters, and it's kind of like they have to get warmed up before they actually get going. I think our offense has been a huge beneficiary of playing or being matched up against not very good offenses. We talk about the Ravens offense not being very good, the Browns offense obviously not being very good, and the Packers offense without Aaron Rodgers, we know that's not going to be very good as well. So their deficiencies have really been masked or their slow starts haven't really been glorified because they're playing against offenses that isn't very explosive. So they haven't had to worry about getting down in a 10-0 or 14-0 hole early on. So, but just personnel wise, I mean, Keenum played okay for the second half. I thought he wasn't very good in the first half. I mean, we saw typical Case Keenum. He's the ultimate wild card. He came out and, stunk it up in the first half, and second half he came out, scrambled around, made some plays, and he converted on some very key third downs, made some good plays within the pocket as well. Defensively, I thought it wasn't one of their best games early on, but I thought they got better as the game went on. We saw early on in the first drive, the Browns really went right down the field. They ended up scoring. Isaiah Crowell ended up getting in easily off of Anthony Harris, missed tackle. But as the game went on, the defense kind of started to wear down on them, and we saw Deshaun Kaiser really make some rookie mistakes, just holding on to the ball too long, and he just looked lost out there. So overall, I'll probably give the game a B-. for both sides of the ball. I thought they could have played better on both sides of the ball, but the slow starts is really what's hurting their grade.
Yeah, Miles. And what about you? And I guess from what you're seeing, JR got into a little bit, but I guess what do you think is causing those slow starts offensively?
That's a good question. I think maybe just a game plan and opponent. Like, how, most offenses, they go into, games with a few scripted plays. I think maybe the defense that they've been playing have kind of done their homework. They've done a good job of kind of, understanding what the Vikings like to do early in games and, what they're trying to do. That Vikings are obviously trying to like establish the run and kind of, grind the clock a little bit before they, air it out a little bit and let the quarterback get into a rhythm before they, start picking everything up. But like, I think it's tough just because I do think the Browns, as bad as they are, I think their defense and their front seven has been pretty good. And I think they showed that against the Vikings. And I thought, obviously, we knew the Ravens had a pretty solid defense. So I think, it's a little bit of both, the defense you're playing and then, just not getting into that rhythm you need to in the, early in the game. But at least, luckily the Vikings have been able to the last couple of weeks, get out of that slump, whether it's, late in the second quarter or, early third quarter. I think the one thing, though, that's kind of scary, and I think hopefully they get that, shake that off, through the bye and everything, and get guys healthy and get, guys like Stephon Diggs, get some of that explosion back into the offense. But I think what's lucky, though, is we played a team like the Baltimore Ravens who didn't have any wide receivers. We played, the Cleveland Browns, who their offense is what they are, because I think some of the turnovers that we've had the last couple of weeks and some of the situations we've had, against the Browns where, you throw that interception, that tipped pass early and, they score, the Browns score, the Browns are up at halftime. You make some of the mistakes we've made the last couple of weeks against really good football teams. You're gonna be hard to beat them. Guys like, we don't play the Eagles this year, but obviously, like you make mistakes like that against the Philadelphia Eagles, they're gonna bury you. Team like the Seattle Seahawks too, but looking at our schedule, you do that to a team like the LA Rams or who am I thinking? Atlanta Falcons. You kind of let them, control the game, and you lose the turnover battle. And then I think it's gonna be hard to win some games in the second half of the season if they're doing that. So I just think eliminating some of the mistakes and just kind of getting back to what they do and getting a healthy Stephon Diggs is going to be important, just because he adds another dimension to this team that it's kind of lacking.
Yeah, and that's a really great point about Stephon Diggs, because I was just looking at I know a lot has been made of obviously Sam Bradford and then Case Keenum and the way he's playing right now, but it's crazy when you look at both of Sam Bradford and Case Keenum's stats before they had Stephon Diggs and Adam Thielen, and then their stats in the one season that each of them have played with Adam Thielen and Stephon Diggs, and it's basically night and day. They go from being or looking like run-of-the-mill, very average journeyman type quarterbacks in terms of the stats to looking like top 10 Pro Bowler type quarterbacks. So it just really goes to show what like having that healthy receiving core does for the quarterbacks that we have on the roster right now. And kind of speaking of quarterbacks and speaking of this game, Saxy Prince, last but definitely not least, because you had the flamethrower out on Twitter during the game in terms of kind of your real-time assessment of what was going on in terms of how Case Keenum was playing and your thoughts around all of that, kind of encompassing the slow start. So I guess, what were your thoughts on the game? And then I guess you can give us a little bit of your thoughts in terms of how you think Case Keenum played, because I feel like your take is a bit stronger, maybe a bit less optimistic than the previous two that we've had so far.
Yeah, I mean, I guess this is the best time as any, right, to rant about Case Keenum. I'll save that for a little bit, but overall, as far as the game, I think the offense, like you guys has mentioned, offense took a while to get a slow start, and that's obviously concerning to me because you are facing a Browns team that is still trying to figure out a lot of things on the defensive side, even if they're even if their front seven's really good. You didn't have Jabril Peppers back there. Not to say he's like a huge playmaker, but they were missing some pieces in their secondary, and that's something that the Vikings should have taken advantage of. Something Case Keenum should have taken advantage of. But with that slow start, and then obviously being able to pick it up, once they started picking it up, you started to see less of the Vikings really impose their will, and you saw more of the Browns really self-destruct. Deshaun Kaiser looked a lot more uncomfortable. He got happy feet in the pocket. He was making, poor choices as far as where he was going with his reads. So I don't know if I can truly say the Vikings really that really felt like a win. It was just like, yeah, the Vikings won that game. Yeah, they won, but it was one of those things where it was a close game at halftime. Browns were up by 1 point, and then they started to self-destruct, and the Vikings, yes, thankfully took advantage of, which is what good teams do. So I think defensively, they played a great game, kept the Browns to 16 points. I don't think the Browns are necessarily they're 0-8, obviously, so that makes them, by definition, a bad team. But I think they have a lot of potential. In the next couple of years, we might start seeing Browns being able to produce better on both sides of the ball. But for right now, they're a bad football team, and I've been really critical of the Vikings because I've wanted them to. Again, these are games where there should be basically blowouts. And I'm not saying necessarily blowouts in terms of being up by 35. I'm just saying blowouts in terms of the Vikings should be able to control the game for most of it. And I didn't see that in the first half. I saw them playing down to what Cleveland, how Cleveland plays, and it's disappointing because this is a team we keep saying, hey, they're Super Bowl caliber. They're they with this defense and then the way the offense can click, they really can make a push. And I completely agree with that. And I put that take out actually yesterday. I think this team is a Super Bowl caliber roster that is missing one piece, and it's not Case Keenum.
Well, all right. Well,
so I'll wait for my Case Keenum rant, but it's
I know, but
that's
you're
what I'll
fired.
stop at. So.
You're fired up right now. You got some good energy, so I'm just gonna leave it with you, and we'll go back through here. So we're midway through the season. The Browns game started off a bit uneven, but as things got going along, the defense, forced some turnovers, got us going, and the game ended up with a score that looked like I think most of us would have expected to see going in. So all in all, 6-2, Vikings team is playing, I think, a lot better than even the most optimistic Vikings fan would have thought at this point in the season. I think right now we are 6th in Football Outsiders DVOA. Pro Football Focus has us ranked in the top 10. Most, big media power rankings have us ranked in the top 10. So all in all, good season so far. Yinka, if you're grading the first half, kind of overall, what are your thoughts on how the team is doing? What are your thoughts on how the offense is doing? And then how would you grade the defense and special teams?
I guess I'm trying not to let my expectations get in the way of my grades. I think overall as a team, we're probably sitting at about a B or B plus. We're obviously facing a third place, schedule right now. So I don't think that we are a third place team. We're obviously a very, very good team. So, we're kind of facing talent that isn't quite matching up to how good we are as a team. So that's why I can't give us more than a B or B plus, because we should essentially be playing as well as we are. My expectations were not very optimistic for this, but I think it's good. So overall, I'd give us a B or B plus. Offense, I would give a B minus, C plus. Defense, special teams, I would give A minus, B plus.
Okay, Miles, how about you? You're usually a bit more optimistic than the Saxy French. So, because you can feel it, like Yink is giving his grades, but, there's some stuff in there that he still needs to get off his chest a little bit. So what are your thoughts and what are your grades, overall team, offense, and defense so far this season?
Yeah, I think, to be 6-2 with your back and the way your defense is playing, it's
so
I think it's a
hold on one sec, Miles, because I think that you have now, taken over on the Prince's bad Wi-Fi tip, and whatever you started saying right there, I'm sure it was really, really good, and everyone really would want to hear it. But none of us could hear it. So let's try that again.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you now.
Okay, cool. I didn't really say too much. I good start, and I like where our bye week is. It's a lot where we are. Having it on your backup / third in
Nope.
Case Keenum.
Definitely losing you again. So what we're gonna do now is we'll slide over to JR and let you go and reposition yourself right next to the router, and then we'll come back to you in just a second. So JR, midpoint of the season, and without Miles here to kind of brighten it up with the optimism, I'm a little bit worried about where we're gonna go next. But what are your thoughts on where the team is, the offense is, and then the defense and special teams are?
Miles is on that Yinka Wi-Fi,
huh? It's true, man. It's true.
Well, I'd probably give them overall a B+. I really like where the defense is at this point. I think they're playing at a really high level. Offensively, I think they're leaving a lot of plays out there, but they are getting the job done. I think Shermer's done a fantastic job of scheming around his personnel, despite them losing Bradford and Dalvin Cook and having some offensive line injuries. I think he's done a really good job of scheming what he does have out there on the field and designing plays for the guys that are playing out there on Sundays in game. So overall, I would give him a B+.
And if you were going to break it down, offense, defense, what would those grades look like for you? Like where do you feel the offense is at right now?
Ooh, I'd probably give him a B-, just because I think they just the passing game is really inconsistent right now. Even though Case Keenum is completing a lot of throws, I think there's a lot of yardage that can be had out there, but the receivers are doing a really good job of helping Keenum and his inaccurate throws out. But by them bailing him out, they're leaving a lot of yards out there and a lot of opportunities out there just because they have to make a lot of heroic catches because of Keenum's accuracy issues. I'm really happy about the running game, especially getting Jerick McKinnon more involved, and not even just the running game, and getting him involved in the screen game and the receiving game as well. So I'm really excited to see how that transitions and goes forward to this point as far as him in the receiving game. So I would give the offense a B-. I give the defense an A, and special teams kind of an incomplete. They really haven't stood out much. I mean, Marcus Sherrills has done what he always does in helping the field position, but I would like to see a little bit more from it going forward. But maybe that's just me being greedy.
And I think he's back. Miles.
Am I back?
Let's go. Let's get those grades in.
Yeah, offense, solid B. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. You're breaking up a little bit, but we can hear you.
Okay. God dang it. All right. Solid B. With what they're doing with a backup in case, great. And I think with Teddy Bridgewater, so I think it can only go up from there. I think with the way offensive lines play, and that's the biggest key right now for this team. To an A. I think they need to be a little bit better against the run, but overall they're just super dominant right now. And probably a B+. I think Quigley's been I don't know this stat in front of me, but I know he's been one of the league.
Yep, and we're breaking up again, and I think we were able to at least pull the grades out of that segment. So I think we'll just have to let that ride and keep it pushing here. So JR, back to you. Who's your first half MVP for the Vikings?
We talking offense or defense?
You can choose, man.
Defense has got to be Linval Joseph for me. I know Everson Griffin has done a phenomenal job. 8 straight games with the sack, I believe it is. I'm going for the record of 9 next week against the Redskins. But the guy that's been phenomenal is Linval Joseph. He's eating up those double teams and allowing Griffin and Hunter to come off the edge, or getting single blocks from those tackles. He's doing a phenomenal job in the run game, eating up those double teams and allowing Eric Kendricks and Anthony Barr, just to come off free and just not having to worry about those linemen coming up to the second level on them just because Linval Joseph is doing such a good job of eating and staying on those double teams. So Linval Joseph is my first half defensive MVP. My offensive MVP is not a player, it's a coach, and that would be Pat Shurmur. He's had to deal with the loss of Sam Bradford and Dalvin Cook and some offensive lineman injuries up front, but he's still been able to get production out of the people that is on the field, whether that's, Stephon Diggs being out a couple games and Thielen stepping up, or if that's Sam Bradford going down, and still preparing Case Keenum to execute the game plan. So I think Pat Shurmur has done a really good job of being creative and scheming around Case Keenum's limitations and allowing the offense to be successful.
That's awesome. Saxy Prince, first half MVP.
I want to go really similar to JR and say kind of Linval Joseph and Everson Griffin, but I have to give this man props because I think he's been doing a lot for the team. Adam Thielen, I think he's at times put the offense a little bit on his shoulders. He isn't getting as much help from other areas and whatnot, and I think he's been a good majority of what the offense has been. He's had 8 straight games of 5 or more catches. If you think about it, Diggs has been out and obviously his presence has missed a lot, but I think Adam Thielen has definitely stepped up in a huge way. I mean, he's been 2 games shy of having 200-yard games. And I just think that he's really put this offense on his back at times, and it's paid dividends for us.
All right, Mr. Gorham. We're going back to the well. Let's try it again. Yeah. First half MVPs.
Between Reef and Thielen, I think the way for Adam Thielen, 100% agree. I think that man has just been season better left side. A little to do this season. Being healthy, he's flunked. He's all over the field. I think he's Harrison Smith, but at my defense.
Yeah, and if I'm going with the first half MVP, I guess the first one, if I'm going offense, I'll join JR and I'll do my mea culpa and saying that Pat Shurmur, someone that I did not have a ton of faith in going into the season based on kind of looking at his old track record, but the way he's been able to adapt this offense around the personnel that he's had and the way that he's, as JR said, adapted to bring the best out of the players that he has. And as the season has gone along, when we had our healthy wide receivers out there, we were going deep down the field. Diggs got nicked up, and we ran a completely different game plan where we were going with a lot of shorter concepts. The beginning of the season, you had Case kind of, even though the results looked good, it was YOLO Case throwing stuff up, kind of living on the edge. And Shurmur, switched things up, adapted the scheme, a lot of short throws, a lot of looking for just the easy pass first. It was surprising or kind of funny in the Browns game because a lot of what, the simplified scheme that Hugh had Kaiser running really looked like a lot of the stuff the Vikings were running, where you fake to the running back, and if they drop back in zone, just dump it off and let him go get yards. So the way that he's been able to adapt things, and obviously, Case Keenum going out, the most important position and playing, at the level that he has, I think that deserves, some recognition. And then for me, Anthony Barr, Linval Joseph, obviously what he does in keeping the linebackers clean is huge, but I think that, Zimmer has said it in the past is, as Anthony Barr goes, it's often how the rest of the Vikings defense goes, and him being in attack mode and just doing what he does well, I think has really, really, really helped this defense go to another level. So those would be my picks for first half MVP for the team. But with that, we're sitting at 6-2, made it through the first half of the season. JR, what are your expectations for the rest of the way? Because I know, Vikings fans, a lot of the times, because things always tend to go wrong for us, we tend to be a naturally pessimistic group, but this looks like a really good team. So what are your expectations for the rest of the season? And kind of when do you expect us to be playing that last game this year?
It's really tough because, like Nika alluded to earlier, they are playing a third place schedule, but I mean, they've won some good games this year. I think the first win of the season was a really good win against the Saints. The Tampa win is kind of looking weak right now, and I thought that was a really good win at the time. But this next 5 game stretch is really tough, and it's going to tell us a lot about this team, especially, that 3 game gauntlet going on the road with the Falcons, the Panthers, and the Bengals. That's a really, really tough schedule right there. Excuse me, the Lions, the Falcons, and the Panthers is what I was alluding to. The 3 game stretch, 3 game road stretch. I think playing those 3 games is really going to tell us a lot about this team because they've had a lot of home games to this point, and they really haven't had to go on the road and play a lot of tough teams. Pittsburgh was a tough game, but we know Sam Bradford's situation and how Case really wasn't prepared to start that game. So I kind of really don't count that game. Now, you know, I really like this team, guys. We talk about the 5-0 start last year and how they, crashed into the ground and just didn't sustain that success. I think this team is really built for success. You talk about elite defense and having a really good running game with marginal play at quarterback. I think they can win some playoff games with that. Do I think they can go to the Super Bowl? I don't think so with Case Keenum. If Teddy Bridgewater is able to return to that pre-draft form guy that we saw, or pre-injury form guy that we saw, excuse me, I think the sky's the limit for this team just because I think Teddy has more upside and he's a lot more accurate than what Case Keenum has showed to this point. And, I mean, let's just be honest, guys. If Teddy is able to come back off his injury, those guys are going to want to run through a brick wall for that guy, and they're going to want to protect him and put just more effort and more pride to what they're doing. And I just think the upside of him coming back combined with this defense and this running game, I think the sky's the limit for this team. But if Case Keenum does stay in there, I think they can win a playoff game, but I don't think their ceiling or their upside is as good if Teddy was in there.
Wow. I mean, optimism from JR. I'm not even sure what to do with this right now. This is crazy. Miles, how about you, man? What are your expectations for the Vikings now after you've seen the first half of the season?
Yeah, I think a really tough 5 coming up. A few of them on the road against some good teams. This week is they're so I think that's one that they need to win. Out of the next 8 game Washington games, one of those where if you lose that one, that could really come back to bite you. Because this the 4 games after that stretch. Division winners and teams that are doing well and overall, I think we can get not a guy like if we can get Teddy Bridgewater back, former them and getting comfortable with that knee again and looking healthy. I think the sky's the limit because his touch, his breath, what this offense is kind of built around for Pat Shurmur. So I think that's really important for this team. And I know Case has done a great job, but we kind of need to take that next, that quarterback to bring us to that, that next level. If we can, of the next 8 at least, Division 11, either, hopefully a first to 11 at the least. And if Teddy comes back and at a good level or close to that or his injury, I think this team could potentially get to 12 wins.
All right, that's some of the typical the optimism that we would expect to hear from Miles. And Saxy Prince, bring us home now that you've seen the first half of the season. And I feels like this sets up nicely for you to get some of those things, those feelings you need to get off your chest there. I guess, what are your thoughts on what you've seen and how does that affect your your outlook, your expectations for the rest of the season?
Coming into this, going into the season, I thought we were going to be a 9-7 club. We clearly are way better. I think something that Rick Spielman did really well is sit on his hands during this trade deadline. It would have been very easy for the Vikings to trade away a few key pieces on where we had depth. Obviously the defensive line and Just some other areas on the wide receiver, for instance. But I think it's really good that he didn't, because I think because of this depth now, I truly believe this team can be a Super Bowl winning team. That's my expectation now. I think that I don't see really any team that has solidified themselves as being, this is a dangerous team. I don't know if the Vikings can beat them. I think that the Eagles might come down to earth a little bit more. I feel the same thing about the Rams. I know that the Saints are starting to get a little bit hot, but I think that they, because of that defense, I know Marshawn Lattimore is playing phenomenal football, but I think that they'll come back to earth a little bit more as well, too. Patriots aren't the same team of old. Big Ben is making more mistakes in Pittsburgh. So there's really not any team that I think is truly dominant like we've seen in the past couple of years, where the top 2-3 teams are they're just leagues above everyone else. So that's where I really feel like the Vikings can make this push to go to the Super Bowl. That being said, I have no idea why on November the 2nd and November the 1st, I have spent too much time arguing with folks on Twitter.com about Case Keenum versus Teddy Bridgewater. It makes no sense to me whatsoever. There is no real basis behind it, really. There's this amount of excuses that people continue to pile on between the two. I was okay with the Sam Bradford versus Teddy Bridgewater because they were, if you look at the career projections, they're fairly similar quarterbacks to play. The biggest difference obviously is context. Teddy Bridgewater was playing in a Norv Turner system that did not cater towards his strength. He was constantly handing the ball to Adrian Peterson, who didn't have a very high success rate throughout the season, which constantly put them in third and long situations. Teddy Bridgewater having to convert, which made him, which showed that he was more than not kind of that top tier quarterback in clutch situations. But with that being said, having to constantly do the 5-step drops, having to do 7-step drops, having an offensive line that wasn't really great. I mean, it wasn't as bad as 2016, but it was still pretty poor. That is context to why Teddy Bridgewater had to check down more often than not, or, sometimes having to take the underneath routes when he wanted to push the ball a little bit further down the field. That being said, again, no idea why we're arguing against Case Keenum, because Case Keenum, let's be honest, he's at best been a top-end backup or fringe starter. That's how he's been his entire career, and that's how he will continue to be. You can't talk to me about QB wins because that's not an actual stat that you can measure. We can measure other things. Yes, he's fourth in interception percentage. Why? Because I don't know whether it's Pat Shurmur or Mike Zimmer telling him not to push the ball further down the field. If that is, it's not Case's fault. But we have seen a drop in Case Keenum's average depth of target. He has decreased that. And not pushing the ball down the field. Case Keenum does not finish in the top 20 in any stats besides average net yards per attempt, and it's about he ranks at about 13th, which isn't terrible, but I would want him to do a little bit better. I mean, he obviously has a lot of weapons around. He has Stephon Diggs, Adam Thielen, Kyle Rudolph. His running game is still performing at a decently high level, I guess you would say, in the respects of losing Dalvin Cook. But the thing is like one of the narratives that I've heard is Case Keenum has chemistry with his wide receivers. No, he does not. He does not have chemistry with his wide receivers. I have seen him miss numerous routes with the Stephon Diggs running wide open. You saw it in the Browns game. You can go back. You can see it in the it's escaping my mind. 4th game of the season. Whatever. You can see Diggs obviously get open. You see the same thing with Adam Thielen. The person who's probably getting a few people who are getting hurt the most by Case Keenum's inaccuracies, and yes, they are inaccuracies, a guy like Kyle Rudolph. Kyle Rudolph is 6'5". Case Keenum, more often than not, is throwing footballs at below Kyle Rudolph's knees. Kyle Rudolph is not an athletic enough guy to get balls by his knees. He's not a guy who's going to be diving on the ground for him. He's
Careful, Inca. Careful. That block button is swift. Yeah. Be careful.
I know. Yeah. He's not the kind of guy who's going to constantly make those circus catches like Adam Thielen. Adam Thielen is another guy that I don't want to see make circus catches anymore. He's going to get in a position where he's going to get hurt. Stephon Diggs is the kind of guy who, because of his athleticism, he likes to get in and out of his cuts really quickly and stuff. Obviously that's caused more injuries around his groin and stuff. So he has to be at 100% to be physical. Jason, I think you were the one that kind of pointed that out to me. That That's one of the few things as far as Case Keenum that I don't understand why we are continuing to argue for this guy. Another guy that I know that we don't talk about enough because we put it more on him. Laquan Treadwell is getting hurt heavily by Case Keenum's inaccuracies. Laquan Treadwell is the kind of wide receiver currently right now, being in his second year in the league. He needs a lot of help from his quarterback. He needs quarterback to throw on time. He needs his quarterback to throw very accurately because more often than not, Laquan Treadwell is not doing the things that wide receivers do to gain the trust of their quarterback. When they're supposed to be turned a certain way, Laquan Treadwell is turned the opposite way. When he's supposed to get a certain amount of depth on his route, he's not getting that. So therefore, the quarterback's not throwing the ball. A guy like Case Keenum throwing inaccurately with a guy who isn't always doing the right thing as a wide receiver, that's a problem, obviously. And now he's getting...
Who's the problem between the two, the way you're making it sound?
Both of them are the issue. Both of them are the issue. I'm saying Treadwell is getting hurt even more so based on all the stuff that he doesn't do really well. He's getting hurt even more so by a quarterback who isn't that accurate. And I think that the Case Keenum hill that people are trying to defend, that is a very, very bad hill to want to die on. And it's mind-boggling that I feel like numerous people have to continue to tell folks that Teddy Bridgewater, at the end of the day, he's an average quarterback. But I'm going to clarify, he is an average starting quarterback. The only people who think there's some kind of argument are the people who don't truly believe that Teddy Bridgewater is an average quarterback. I outlined already all the things that Teddy Bridgewater had to go against. He had to go his offensive coordinator. He had to go against a star running back. Even with that, even with things stacked against him, he still played like an average quarterback. Pat Shurmur's system is a system that is tailored to bring out the talents that is Teddy Bridgewater. You know, you have a lot more shorter routes. You have some yards after catch type things. You can stretch the field a lot more. The weird thing about Another argument I hear is obviously about arm strength, and I think this is a thing that's really get misconstrued by big media as well as fans, because they really only think about it as you either throw really, really short or you can throw really, really far. And the problem is when a guy throws short, for whatever reason, fans think that guy can't throw the ball far. No, usually if a guy is throwing short, that is more of a decision than the lack of arm strength. And Teddy Bridgewater, he is sort of weird because you see guys like Sam Bradford who either pushes the ball down the field or he throws short, which obviously makes their ADOT go towards the middle, makes it average, right? Teddy Bridgewater is different. He's an intermediate type of guy. So obviously his ADOT should be a lot better because he's being able to cut you up over the middle. His best routes are obviously corner routes and out routes. He throws beautiful balls. So what I'm trying to say, the inaccuracies, the fallacies as far as Teddy Bridgewater not having a good arm strength, I think it's false. I think he has probably a middle of the road arm strength. He's not a Jay Cutler, he's not a Matthew Stafford, he's not Sam Bradford, but he's also not like a Kellen Moore or a Nick Foles type quarterback who lack arm strength. He's a guy who's kind of right in that middle, and you've obviously seen him improve because he's had to with getting a lot more lower body strength and whatnot. So with that, I guess some of the last narratives that I hear that I think I just need to stop hearing is about when Teddy Bridgewater should play. Teddy Bridgewater should play Week 10 against Washington. Why? Because you have 8 games now to see if this guy is going to be your franchise guy for however long he needs to be. Right? We can't wrap Teddy Bridgewater in bubble wrap. He needs to get on the field. We need to see him be able to play football again at a high level, or we need to move on and go. And you can always go back to Case Keenum if he doesn't play well, right? So, and Sage Rosenfels earlier this week had kind of talked about on one of his podcasts because everybody asked, well, how long does it take for a quarterback to get back? Because there's a lot of people who think, well, it's going to take him a few games and knock the rust off. Sage Rosenfels, NFL quarterback, says it takes a few series. That's all it's going to take. You're going to probably see a few series in Washington where Teddy's not going to look like that guy of old, and then he's either going to turn it on or he's not going to at all. And I don't want to hear anymore about Case wanting to we want to wait until he starts playing bad and costing us games. No, the next 8 games that we face are all NFC. 7 out of 8 of them are NFC games. That means one of those losses has huge implications on what happens in the playoffs. That means we either are going to have home field advantage, or we might potentially be 5 or 6 seed. And I would much rather have the road to the Super Bowl go through Minnesota. So no, I'm not going to wait until Case Keenum throws duds. We've already seen that his play doesn't have as much effect on this. It's not costing us games. It's also not the reason why we're winning games. The best game he had was Tampa Bay. Since then, he's regressed towards the mean. So, at the end of the day, the things that Teddy does well, his mobility in terms of pocket presence, not the guy who's going to be running around making plays. I mean, he can do that, but his pocket presence is amazing. Those are the kinds of things that Teddy Bridgewater can have, even early on, even if he has a little bit of rust, things that he can already do that he does better than Case Keenum. So it's frustrating that we have to continue to have this conversation. People who say that he's been out of football for 14 months. Well, guess what? Sam Bradford was out of football for about a year and a half, and no one said anything about him being able to play. He missed a little bit more or a little bit less than half of 2013. He was gone for all of 2014 and he didn't even come back until 2015. Were we saying that, Sam Bradford shouldn't play because he's missed so much football? No, we don't, because that narrative doesn't fit a guy like Sam Bradford. So I want to see on week 10, Teddy Bridgewater playing football as the starting quarterback of the Minnesota Vikings. And I don't want to hear anything else about that else.
Well, all right then. Tell them why you mad, son. Anybody dare say anything to retort, or are we just gonna let it lie with Yinka's rant? JR, you got anything to follow up on there?
Not at all. Yinka's rant deserves a standing ovation.
Yes, sir. Tell them why you mad, son.
Right.
I guess we would go to Miles for follow up, but he got that Yinka Wi-Fi now, so I don't know if we were gonna get anything out of it. Well, all right. There's really nothing we're gonna say that's gonna top what Saxy Prince just gave to us there. So I think we're just gonna go ahead and let this thing be wrapped up for the night. If you haven't recently, head over to climbingthepocket.com. JR's dropped some stuff, Flips dropped some stuff, Yinka brought some heat, but that's really it. Tell them why you mad, Yinka. My name's Jason Brown, here with JR, Miles, and the Prince. And thank you for listening. Y'all have a good one. All right, we up. Welcome back to another episode of the Climbing the Pocket podcast. I am your host, Jason Brown. You can find me on Twitter at BrownJason. And we got to stop because the phone is ringing. One moment, please. My mother-in-law. Calling my house phone. It's my mother-in-law. Hold up.
The fact that you have a house phone is such a Jason thing.
Okay. I will make sure we bring it for you on Saturday.
Showing his age.
Yeah, he is. Yo, I tried to call my dad's house phone once, and he finally got rid of it. I don't even, he's had the same number, same house phone for 40 years, I swear.
Okay. Alright. Okay. Yeah. So whatever we can listen. Yeah. All right, well that's fun. Mother-in-law left her purse in my house. All right, take 2. Y'all ready?
Yeah.
No, you gotta leave that on, man.
Yeah, put that in the outtake. All right.